Welcome back to TNLP, the newsletter podcast brought to you by the Hazmat guys. Timmy here, back with the latest in Hazmat from around the U.S. Without wasting any time, we'll start with a story from CBS News out of Texas, where a hazmat emergency in southern Tarrant County sent a 1-year-old to the hospital by air and injured several others, including a firefighter, Thursday evening, after officials said they were exposed to sulfuric acid. Emergency crews responded around 6 p.m. to a hazmat incident with burn victims in the 5100 block of Wilson Road in an unincorporated area near Everman, according to Everman Emergency Services. Firefighters found 2 patients outside and were told a third victim, a 1-year-old child, was still inside the residence. Officials said crews entered the home, removed the child, and began advanced life support. The 1-year-old was flown to Parkland Hospital with serious injuries, according to authorities. 2 additional patients were treated on scene for minor injuries. One firefighter was transported to JPS Fort Worth after exposure to an unknown chemical and is in stable condition, officials said. The Everman Fire Department told CBS News Texas that the 1-year-old got into a cabinet containing sulfuric acid. At some point, the toddler got the acid on themselves, causing severe burns. Everman Fire Chief Landon Watley warned of the dangers of toxic chemicals being kept inside homes. The main thing is, you got to know where your kiddos are at all times. You got to keep an eye on them. You got to keep everything locked up. If there are any chemicals in your home, you got to make sure those are out of reach of kids that don't know any better. Because then accidents do happen, and it takes 1 second of you taking your eye off a kiddo for them to get into something that can potentially harm or kill them, Watley said. The condition of the 1-year-old is unknown at this time. The 2 adults and the firefighter who were exposed to the fumes are expected to be okay, officials said. Here's hoping for a speedy recovery to the little one and all others involved. We'll head next to Pennsylvania, where ABC 27 News shared the Tyson Foods facility in Lancaster County was evacuated on Friday due to a hazmat incident. According to Garden Spot Fire Rescue, crews were called to the facility around 1 p.m. for a reported gas leak. Contractors repairing a sinkhole beneath the building inadvertently ignited a small blue flame, prompting an evacuation. First responders detected elevated combustible gas readings beneath the building and spent several hours taking readings to determine the source of the methane. The likely cause was determined to be a compromised landfill gas transmission line, according to Garden Spot Fire Rescue, initiating coordinated efforts with federal and local officials. Transmission was shut down, and flaring operations began at landfills in Berks and Chester counties. Crews were at the Tyson facility late into the night Friday handling the issue. Finally, a story a little different from our usual rundown. Local reporter Ricky Munoz returns to the scene of a deadly ammonia accident on a Houston freeway 50 years later. Munoz spoke with retired firefighters as they described bodies on the freeway, victims collapsing while trying to run, and the toxic cloud that changed Houston forever. 50 years later, retired Houston firefighters say they still remember every detail from one of the deadliest disasters in Houston history. It looked like a war zone, retired Houston firefighter Brad Riley said. On May 11, 1976, a tanker carrying more than 7,000 gallons of anhydrous ammonia plunged off the 610 West Loop ramp and crashed onto the Southwest Freeway below. The impact ripped open the tanker, sending a massive cloud of toxic ammonia into the air during the middle of the morning rush. 7 people died, dozens more were injured, and the disaster changed the Houston Fire Department forever. Riley was only 20 years old when he responded to the scene. That morning had started like any other shift. Riley said he and a district chief had just finished another call farther down the Southwest Freeway when dispatchers warned crews about a tanker crash involving ammonia near the West Loop interchange. As they drove toward the area, traffic completely locked up. Riley said he ended up driving against traffic on the freeway shoulder just to reach the scene. When they arrived, he said the destruction was overwhelming. Man, it looked like a war zone. You know, the parts of the truck scattered everywhere, and the truck driver's body was lying in the middle of the road, Riley said. The crash scene stretched across the freeway. Pieces of the tanker and destroyed vehicles were scattered throughout the interchange. Victims were already dying from exposure to the fumes. Riley remembers immediately finding several people on the ground struggling to breathe. We immediately came across 3 people, one man who had already died, and there were 2 who were struggling to breathe, he said. At the time, Houston firefighters had little training on hazardous material incidents and almost no specialized equipment to handle a chemical release that large. Firefighters grabbed an air pack from the chief's car and tried helping victims breathe through the mask. But I don't know how much good that did, Riley said quietly. What stayed with him most was the helplessness. Have a brown mucus coming out of their mouth and their nose, and the feeling of not being able to help them, Riley said. As the ammonia spread across the freeway, drivers abandoned their vehicles trying to escape. Some never made it far enough. The people who were forced to stop, they got out of the car and tried to get away from it, Riley said. They probably made it 25 or 30 feet before they collapsed. The toxic cloud moved unpredictably across the freeway interchange. Riley described it as almost impossible to avoid. Yes, when we got there, the big, huge white cloud was just above the West Loop, he said. The danger wasn't always visible. You could be standing there trying to help somebody, and all of a sudden you couldn't breathe, Riley said. Retired firefighter Bill Hand also responded to the scene that day. Hand was working out of Station 1 downtown and helping transport additional air bottles to crews already fighting to rescue victims on the freeway. By the time he arrived, much of the initial chaos had already unfolded. But he remembers unknowingly walking into what he called an invisible shield of ammonia. It was like bam, Hand said. I mean, it just sets you back. At the time, firefighters did not fully understand how dangerous anhydrous ammonia could become after a crash. We really didn't know what to expect, Hand said. Years later, Hand would learn the chemical had expanded rapidly after the tanker ruptured. It expands 800 times, Hand explained. So you had 800 tank trucks of gas that went off the freeway. The disaster exposed major weaknesses in Houston's emergency response capabilities. Back then, Houston did not have a dedicated hazmat team. Firefighters responding that day were largely learning in real time while trying to save lives. We didn't have a hazmat team, Riley said. We didn't have the equipment on the apparatuses and on the chief's cars as they do now. The deadly crash became a turning point for the department. Hand later became one of the original members of Houston's first hazmat team after fire leaders pushed to improve chemical emergency response training. I was part of the original team, Hand said. Houston firefighters began training directly with petrochemical companies and industrial emergency response teams throughout the region. Hand said the department slowly built a specialized response program focused on chemical incidents, rescue operations, and firefighter safety. He spent the remainder of his career focused heavily on hazmat response and training. I really pushed for training, Hand said. That's how much I believe in it. Houston Fire Department Chief Munoz says the lessons learned from the 1976 disaster helped shape the modern hazmat response system Houston uses today. Our hazmat teams I would consider them the best team in the country, Munoz told KPRC2. The training they do, the equipment we have, and, of course, the support that we have. Today, Houston hazmat crews use specialized trucks, protective suits, air monitoring systems, chemical detection equipment, and advanced response protocols that firefighters in 1976 simply did not have access to. Munoz said departments from across the country often look to Houston's hazmat teams for training and guidance. 5 decades later, both firefighters say the memories never disappeared. Riley says every trip through the Southwest Freeway interchange brings him back to that day. I think about it every time I go through that intersection, he said. Both men say they hope people understand dangerous chemicals are still moving through Houston every day, and they warn drivers to stay alert around tanker trucks and chemical spills. Don't drive through vapor clouds, Hand said. Our freeways are jammed with people. There's a lot of hazardous materials out there. It only takes one incident to change our response tactics forever. It's stories like these that remind us how far we've come as an industry. That's going to do it for this week's episode. We'll be back next week with a new set of stories. Timmy, over and out.